In a world that worships crowds and connection, there lies a silent truth. Sometimes the strongest people walk alone, not broken, awakened. What if being alone isn't a curse, but a signal, the universe's invitation to elevate your life in ways crowds never could? Tonight, we dive deep into the psychology, the philosophy, the raw human experience of solitude and strength. Why do some of the most resilient, powerful minds in history choose solitude? Because alone is where you meet the parts of yourself no one else gets to see. Because growth demands silence, and progress asks for discomfort. Because the long road, though lonely, is where character is forged in fire. If you've ever felt out of place in a world that demands you belong, listen closely. This story is for you. Solitude has been misunderstood for centuries. Most people associate it with loss, rejection, or emotional failure. But solitude is not the absence of people, it is the absence of noise. And silence has always been dangerous to shallow thinking. Psychologically, humans are conditioned to fear being alone because modern culture equates worth with visibility. If you are seen, you matter. If you are surrounded, you are validated. But this conditioning is artificial. It has nothing to do with truth, only with control and conformity. Solitude removes the external mirrors you've relied on to define yourself, and when those mirrors disappear, you're left with a question most people never ask: who am I without the audience? That question terrifies the unexamined mind. But for those willing to sit with it, solitude becomes a powerful initiator. It strips away performance. It dissolves false identities. It reveals the difference between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. Loneliness is not caused by being alone. Loneliness is caused by inner fragmentation, when you are disconnected from yourself. Many people are surrounded by others and still feel empty because none of those connections are real. Solitude, on the other hand, can feel deeply fulfilling when it reconnects you to your inner world. From a psychological perspective, solitude increases self-awareness. Without distraction, the mind begins to observe itself. Thoughts slow down, patterns become visible, emotional reactions reveal their origins. This is where growth begins, not in stimulation, but in observation. Philosophically, solitude has always been the ground of transformation. Every major thinker, mystic, or leader retreated from the crowd before reshaping the world, not because they hated people, but because clarity requires distance. Solitude is where you stop absorbing the opinions of others and start forming your own. It is where you learn to sit with discomfort without escaping it. And discomfort, when faced consciously, sharpens the mind. The modern world fears solitude because solitude creates independent thinkers, and independent thinkers are difficult to manipulate. So if you find yourself alone, not by accident, but by awareness, understand this: you are not falling behind. You are stepping out of the noise. And in that silence, something rare begins to happen. You begin to hear yourself. The fear of being alone is not a fear of emptiness. It is a fear of confrontation. When you are alone, there is no distraction between you and your thoughts, no noise to soften the truth, no validation to mask insecurity. You are left face to face with your inner dialogue. And for most people, that dialogue is uncomfortable. Psychologically, this fear is rooted in avoidance. People avoid solitude because solitude exposes unresolved emotions, unfulfilled desires, and ignored truths. The mind prefers distraction because distraction delays responsibility. Many people don't fear solitude itself, they fear what solitude will reveal. Carl Jung described this as avoidance of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we suppress because they challenge the image we want to maintain. Solitude brings the shadow into the light. It forces honesty, and honesty demands courage. Another core reason people fear being alone is because their self-worth is externally anchored. If your value depends on attention, approval, or belonging, then solitude feels like rejection. You interpret absence as failure. But this is a psychological trap. External validation is unstable by nature. It shifts, it fades, and when it disappears, those who rely on it feel empty. Solitude exposes this dependency, and dependency feels threatening to the ego. Yet those who face solitude and survive it undergo a profound shift. They stop measuring themselves by external response and begin defining themselves internally. This transition is not comfortable, but it is necessary for maturity. Philosophically, the fear of solitude reflects a deeper fear, the fear of meaninglessness. When distractions disappear, you are forced to ask difficult questions about purpose, direction, and identity. These questions destabilize false certainty, but they also open the door to authentic meaning. The examined life requires isolation at some point. Without it, you inherit beliefs instead of choosing them. You live someone else's values instead of discovering your own. Most people never want that responsibility, but those who do, those who step into solitude consciously, begin the process of psychological independence. They no longer need constant reassurance to feel real. They no longer panic in silence. They become internally anchored. And once that happens, solitude stops feeling like abandonment. It becomes strength. Solitude is not passive. It is an active psychological environment. When entered intentionally, it becomes a training ground for the mind. In solitude, your thoughts are no longer filtered through conversation, reaction, or distraction. You hear them clearly, and clarity reveals truth. From a psychological standpoint, solitude increases emotional regulation. When no one is there to absorb or soothe your emotions, you learn to process them yourself. You stop outsourcing emotional stability and begin developing it internally. This is how resilience is built. Solitude also strengthens identity. Without social pressure, you begin separating authentic desire from conditioned behavior. You realize which parts of you exist for approval and which exist because they are true. This distinction is critical. Powerful individuals are not loud, they are centered. Their confidence does not come from dominance, but from self-containment, and self-containment is forged in solitude. Philosophically, solitude gives perspective. Distance from the crowd allows you to see patterns clearly. Cultural illusions, social games, emotional manipulation. What once felt overwhelming becomes understandable. Nietzsche believed that solitude was necessary for anyone who wished to transcend mediocrity, not because the crowd is evil, but because the crowd moves slowly, safely, and predictably. Growth requires deviation. Solitude also nurtures creativity. Original thought does not emerge from consensus, it emerges from quiet exploration. In silence, ideas rise that would be drowned out by noise. And perhaps most importantly, solitude builds self-trust. When you spend time alone and survive your own thoughts, something shifts. You realize you don't need constant reassurance. You begin trusting your judgment. This is where inner authority is born. Once you develop this authority, your relationships change. You no longer seek connection out of need, but out of choice. You stop tolerating shallow bonds. You value depth over proximity. Solitude doesn't make you disconnected from others. It makes you connected to yourself. And that connection becomes the foundation for a powerful, intentional life. Solitude does not remove pain. It reveals it. Pain avoided becomes suffering. Pain observed becomes wisdom. In silence, emotions rise that were previously numbed: regret, fear, longing, uncertainty. These experiences are uncomfortable, but they are necessary. They point to unfinished business within the self. Psychologically, pain is information. It tells you where growth is required. When you distract yourself, you silence that signal. When you sit in solitude, you finally listen. This is why solitude feels heavy at first. You are no longer running. But something remarkable happens when pain is faced consciously. Instead of overwhelming you, it begins to organize itself. You understand its origin, you recognize its message, and once understood, pain loses its power to control you. Philosophically, suffering has always been linked to transformation. The Stoics viewed discomfort as training. Buddhism saw suffering as the gateway to awakening. Existential thinkers understood that meaning is forged through confrontation, not comfort. Solitude creates the conditions for this confrontation. When you stay present with discomfort instead of escaping it, you expand your psychological capacity. What once felt unbearable becomes tolerable. What once controlled you becomes manageable. This is emotional strength. Most people never develop it because they never stay still long enough. Solitude teaches patience. It teaches endurance. It teaches acceptance. Not resignation, but understanding. You stop fighting reality and start working with it. And from that cooperation, purpose emerges. Pain refines. Silence clarifies. Together, they transform. The highest form of freedom is self-sovereignty, the ability to govern your inner world without dependency. Solitude is the path to that freedom. When you are alone long enough, you stop performing, you stop reacting, you stop adjusting yourself to fit expectations, and in that stillness, you encounter your authentic self. Psychologically, this is individuation, the integration of all aspects of identity into a unified whole. It is the opposite of fragmentation, and it requires solitude. Self-sovereignty means you are no longer ruled by emotional impulses, social pressure, or external validation. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of conform. This does not make you detached, it makes you grounded. Once sovereignty is developed, relationships improve. You no longer cling, you no longer fear abandonment. You connect freely because you are complete on your own. Solitude teaches you that strength is internal, that peace is cultivated, that identity is chosen. And once learned, this lesson cannot be taken away. Solitude is not a mistake. It is a message. It appears when distraction no longer serves you, when noise no longer satisfies, when surface-level living begins to feel hollow. Most people resist this moment. They rush to fill the silence. They fear what stillness might reveal. But those who lean into it discover something rare: themselves. Silence is not empty. It is full of truth. In solitude, you stop borrowing identity. You stop outsourcing meaning. You stop waiting to be validated. And slowly, you become self-sustaining. This is not an easy transformation. It demands honesty. It demands patience. It demands courage. But it also delivers clarity. You learn that being alone is not being abandoned. It is being undistracted. You learn that discomfort is not danger. It is growth. You learn that strength is not loud. It is calm. The world celebrates connection, but misunderstands depth. It glorifies noise, but fears silence. It praises belonging, but avoids authenticity. Solitude corrects all of that. It teaches you to stand without leaning, to think without echoing, to live without permission. If you are alone right now, do not rush to escape it. Listen, observe, reflect. There is something here meant to shape you. You are not behind. You are becoming. And when you return to the world, you will not return empty. You will return rooted, clear, unshakable. Silence does not weaken you. It prepares you. And those forged in silence are never easily broken.